Typically, apartment and condo, they have lights, heat, elevators, everything running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
You'd think that living in a small space like these newer condos here in Vancouver would have a major reduction on your carbon footprint. But it turns out newer buildings are actually sucking up a lot more power than you realize. BC Hydro says newer buildings like the ones behind me here in Vancouver can actually eat up twice as much power as older buildings did in the 1980s.
We think this is largely due to these new buildings being larger, having more suites, as well as being equipped with more luxury amenities like pools and hot tubs, saunas, in some cases even bowling alleys and movie theaters, all which significantly increase the electricity consumption of the building.
It all started in the late 90s when electricity use in high-rise buildings went up dramatically.
Especially between the period between 1999 and 2009, the amount of electricity used by these buildings between that period actually increased by about 65%.
The Crown Corporation estimates only 50% of the power being used is going into individual units. The other half is being used for extra amenities and common spaces.
So for the average British Columbian who's living in an apartment or condo, their bill is about $43 a month. If they were to pay for the electricity used by these extra amenities and the common spaces, this would add about $40 to their monthly bill, which brings their average bill to almost as much as a single-family home.
So how can your building improve efficiency?
So things like automatic controls are a great option. You can put them into hallways and common spaces and have the lights only come on when people are actually occupying the space.
But one organization says it comes down to much more than just turning the lights out.
When we change the building codes and standards, that's what is going to make the biggest difference. There's also energy labeling that's intended to come out. That's both provincial and federal policy.
He says it's also important for stratas and building owners to consider conducting deep energy retrofits on existing structures.
Typically, it's done at a certain stage in a building's life cycle when the opportunity arises. So if the windows, for example, need replacing, replace them with very high quality windows rather than the cheapest available.
He says it's not that expensive, especially if you can come up with a step-by-step plan over time. BC Hydro says it's seen a 22% increase in the number of condo and apartment accounts since 2011, and they now represent nearly 500,000 throughout the province. In Vancouver, Andrea Macpherson, City News.